Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another review. This is the first time I'm reviewing a Christopher Nolan movie on this channel, and honestly, I cannot think of any other movie that I could review than the latest blockbuster in cinemas today. In this case, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. In many ways, it's almost like a full circle moment for the director since he has been in the game for a long time. He has directed a lot of movies, and this one, and many people consider to be one of his most personal, as well as being the most anticipated one that he has created, alongside all the others that he has managed to do in the past. This is the first time I get to talk about Christopher Nolan, his directing skills, the way he shoots his angles for cameras, and get to talk about why he does the movies that he does and the kind of mentality that they come from whenever he does a movie like this. In the case of this one, it also is important to mention that it's based on the poem by Homer. If you're not familiar with Greek mythology or history about the great pantheon of the Olympus, Zeus, and Poseidon, and all these other Greek mythologies, other than the fact that you probably have played God of War many times and seen a lot of movies based on those Greek, descendancies, then you're probably gonna get an idea here. Also, it's important to mention that this is based. I already said that it was based on the Odyssey by Homer, which was a great mythologist, or the person who created this kind of stories alongside the Iliad with the story of Greek invading Troy. I guess it's also a better time to mention that this was a project that Christopher Nolan had in his mind for a lot of years, probably since he wanted to be or make a movie like this. Believe it or not, this is something that I found out recently. But the director was one of the few pitches to direct the movie Troy. If you don't remember, the movie Troy was based, like I said, on how how Greece invaded Troy, how this tell the stories of Achilles, Hector in Paris, and all these other characters in Greek mythology about how they invaded the great city of Troy, how it all ended for everyone. And this was one of the movies that Christopher Nolan wanted to direct. However, in a funny twist of fate, he had another person who wanted to direct this movie, the late Wolfgang Peterson. This was the same director who directed some of the most recognizable movies from the 90s and early 2000s. And this was one of his most recognizable pieces. Although it was plagued with a lot of problems and controversies surrounding the behind the scenes cameras, how the direction changed for him when he was slated to direct, ironically, Batman vs. Superman in the early 2000s. Yeah, that movie was in high demand before it came out in 2016. Can you believe the years that passed since that movie came out? This He was slated to do that. Then the studio Warner Brothers decided to, I don't know what it was, but switch the directors. In this case, Christopher Nolan ended up directing a Batman movie, which come to known as the Dark Knight trilogy, and then Wolfgang Peterson directed this movie, which was, like I said, it had a lot of issues with the actors, the shots, the timing, the delay. It had a lot of issues, and one day maybe I'll talk about it. But for now, let's just say that for Christopher, he also acknowledged that at that time he probably would have failed that movie as well because it was such a large scale movie to make. And because of the changes they made, it probably would have meant the end of his career because he was still young at the time. So he had to first do a lot of movies over the years to gain the experience necessary to tackle such subject. So he managed to do a lot of films, and this is the end result that we got today. So we're here to talk about it. We're here to talk about the Odyssey, how he directed it, the cast that he got, the story that he told, and how the critics reacted to it. So without further ado, let's before talk about the movie, let's talk about Christopher Nolan's filmography. I already said it before, on the behind the scenes history that he wanted to do for Troy. But for once, let's talk about what he has done as a director of all the movies he has directed. The Following, Memento, The Prestige, the aforementioned Dark Knight trilogy movies, The Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, Oppenheimer, all those movies he directed. All the patterns that you see when you are watching a Christopher Nolan movie is that he tends to ground the characters and the story to be more realistic, to trying to make it as real as possible. But also, he has this desire to tell the story in not in a chronological order, but in bits and pieces, like Quentin Tarantino used to do when he directed Pulp Fiction. In the case of Christopher Nolan, he wanted to tell the stories that he wanted to direct in order to tell almost like a convoluted plot with characters that are trying to explain the exposition to the other characters, going through some journey of either self-discovery or through some personal journeys to help others. It's hard to say. I mean, a lot of the movies had different approaches, but Christopher Nolan always has some of the same story beats and cliches that he has known for the years. Memento, like I said, it was one of his few movies that he is well known as. He had that unchronological movie order that he always does in his movies. The Prestige, about magic, became like a game of chess between two men about who can do the most tricks. The Dark Knight trilogy, of course, trying to make Batman as grounded and realistic as possible to make us believe that a guy dressing up as a bat can be believable for people. We see Inception, about the story about learning how to go through dream to a dream to another dream to another dream. It becomes something that we have been seeing for years. I could say he's one of the most well known directors. He really understands what makes a movie to be watchable, that you have to make the people care about what you're watching, how that you have to feel it as real as possible, even though the scenarios can be a little bit hard for people to understand or to comprehend as something realistic. It has its issues with a lot of movies, but hey, everybody goes to watch it and they can acknowledge the technical aspects as well as the storytelling, how they can be inspiring in some ways. And in the last one that he directed was arguably his magnum opus, Oppenheimer. Now, Oppenheimer is a 3 hour movie in which it will leave you with a lot to think about, but also it will leave you exhausted because of all the story, the time that it took, and interpreting the real life story of Robert J. Oppenheimer. But I'm not here to talk about that movie, but it's fair to say that this was part of his filmography, and it's part of his mentality of how he wants to direct movies that want to feel like a real and major event. The movie Oppenheimer could have been just another docu series, another docu movie telling the story of this real life man, but he approached it with a more like of interpretation. It also goes without saying that this was the first movie that he directed by Universal Studios. At the time, always remember, Nolan always directed movies for Warner Brothers. But after the whole movie releasing in IMAX or on HBO Max and not in theaters, Nolan said that he couldn't do that because his main goal is to make movie theaters relevant as much as possible, because yeah, we live in a day and age where everybody can download the movie and watch it anytime they want. It's kind of like the thing that we always want to do whenever we are lazy. Let's be honest, we kind of are lazy because we don't want to go places and we want to stay in the comfort zone of our home. Regardless of that, it's important to mention that that's one of his main approaches whenever he directs a movie. He wants to make sure that everybody is watching it on theaters. And in my opinion, he has succeeded thus far. And Odyssey is his latest interpretation. So, what happens in this story? Well, if you're familiar with Homer's poem, you know that this is a story of how the great king of Ithaca, Odysseus, is trying to get back home after the war in Troy and managed to defeat the great city. He then embarks into a journey to go back home with his wife and son Telemachus. Unfortunately for him, he encounters a lot of trial and tribulation in which he has encountered a lot of places and a lot of creatures in which it derails his mission, losing men along the way, and also learning and rediscovering a lot of things that he has ignored for far too long. And at the same time, we see his son Telemachus seeing how the suitors are trying to marry his mother Penelope. So it's also a journey for him to find out how to where his father is, and how even if he doesn't come back, how he has to take over the throne, but doesn't know how. So this is a story of two men, but most of the time is recognizable as the story of Odysseus' journey back home. But it's a journey that, in my opinion, has been told by Christopher Nolan for a lot of years, and it has told that story in different ways. And this one is like his own interpretation of doing so. But it's definitely a journey of rediscovery, analyzing, and compromising, but also about sacrifice. And that is something that is the theme of this movie. Now, with all that said, let's talk about all the cast and characters that Nolan got for this movie. Because here's the thing, Nolan is known for getting the best casting members and the best actors for his films. Even if it's in small roles, he always finds a way to put them into very important and meaningful roles. And this one is no exception. The cast that we have in this movie is definitely larger, but like I said, they all had small roles in this film. But it will be remiss to say that they all play important parts, and I will be dismissive if I don't mention them all. Like Samantha Morton as Circe, the witch that can curse Odysseus' men and turn them into animals, or John Bernthal as Menelaus, the brother of Agamemnon, and the man who takes his place as king in his own country. Lupita Nyong'o playing a dual role of Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. Elliot Page as Zenon, Billy Irwin as Polymachus. We also have James Remar as Tiresias, and of course Benny Safdie as Agamemnon. This is obviously one of the most known roles, or because he doesn't say much or doesn't do much, but he's the posing figure the Greeks that invade Troy, and he probably has one of the most memorable costume designs of this movie because he really stands out with his entire look. Regardless of that, obviously he made an impact as well as all the other cast members. So now that I mentioned the majority of them, and there are a lot more, I could mention them, but this video could take long. But I'm gonna mention the ones that stand out to me the most. So let's start first with El Mes, played by John Leguizamo. As a fellow Colombian person, it's good to see that Leguizamo is still casted in major movie roles in Hollywood because this is the most famous Colombian comedian and actor that has ever had a great filmography in his life. He has played a lot of characters both in comedy and in drama, and in here is no exception. He plays a blind shepherd, a blind farmer called Hermes, who is the right hand of Odysseus and Telemachus and his family. He is a man who doesn't see, but he can hear everything, and he's almost like an Alfred, which makes sense considering that Christopher Nolan directed The Dark Knight. And here he is similar to Alfred, in which he's an all-wise man who pretty much is like the guiding course or the guiding North Star for our characters, trying to guide our men into this incredible journey of self-discovery and back home. In the case of Hermes, he is almost like a mentor figure to Telemachus, in which he's trying to teach him about his father because the kid only knows him through the myths and stories of other men. And Hermes is trying to tell him how he was, why he got the way that he got, what made him such a great warrior and a great king, and all this other stuff. He serves like, the anchor of heart, or if you want to call it, to these dire times. We also need to mention other characters like Athena, played by Zendaya. Now, in this case, at the time of this recording, Zendaya is also part of another major blockbuster movie that just recently came out, which is Spider-Man: No Way Home. I'm gonna get to the other actor as well in a moment, but needless to say, she plays a very small part as the goddess Athena, and the goddess of truth, if I'm not mistaken. Here, as small as the role she plays, she serves as the moral compass for Odysseus in his journey back home. They do something with Athena in this movie, in which will probably make people confused or pissed off depending on your learnage, your knowledge on Greek mythology. But it goes without saying that here she serves as a moral compass for Odysseus in his journey back home, and make him realize of his actions, decisions, and the consequences that came afterwards when he realizes what he has done. She is there mostly in some small scenes, but definitely becomes like the beacon of hope, the light at the end of the tunnel for Odysseus when he tries to go back to Ithaca. Definitely a small but important role in this larger scale movie. Speaking of another small role, we have Charlize Theron as Calypso. Calypso is the woman who rescues Odysseus and keeps him there so he doesn't have to suffer anymore in his journey back home. Charlize Theron, like I said, is a small role as Calypso. She just serves as trying to remind Odysseus of his journey what he has done before and what he is trying to do since then, like trying to repair his mind after being broken for so many years of traveling and almost losing rationale and a lot of men. She is trying to keep Odysseus alive, but not knowing how to keep him in her place, like the place that she called home, but Odysseus doesn't see it that way. And she tries in some ways to remind Odysseus who he is and his choices. She falls in love with Odysseus, so obviously she's doing this for major love, but in the end she knows that she's not probably good for him in the end. Now let's talk about some of the major principal players. In this case, Robert Pattinson as Antonius. He is the villain of the movie, for the lack of better speak. But yeah, I mean, we can see that Pattinson plays this character with such a devilish sneer, or such a devilish way to do so. He's one of the men who tries to marry with Penelope in an effort to gain power of the throne of Ithaca and rule it by his own hands. Unfortunately, there are a lot of suitors who want to marry Penelope as well, and he's trying to scheme and manipulate in order to get on top, for lack of a better word. So Robert described playing this character as a James Woods kind of performance. You know, the guy who is very sneaky, very devilish, very sarcastic, and very asshole-ish, if you will. This is the kind of character that really suits Robert Pattinson. We all know him for his role as Batman, but let's just say that he really plays a good role as the villain, because he plays the kind of character that is really, really conniving and disgusting to listen to. But he's also a bit of a coward. He lets others take his place in order to slither his way on top. He's so mean and disgusting to Telemachus because he doesn't see him as an heir to the throne, but more just a kid. And he's trying his best to reach his main goal. But unfortunately, he's too much of a coward to get his hands dirty and lets other people fight his own battles. So yeah, definitely a devilish performance by Robert Pattinson. Now let's talk about Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway. I've seen Anne Hathaway through a lot of years, through making us laugh as well as cringe with her Princess Diary performance, through his other major roles that she has acquired over the years, like the Dark Knight trilogy, Dark Knight Rises, but most importantly, Les Miserables. I can tell you from experience that it was one of the first few movies that Anne Hathaway made me cry. I'm not ashamed to admit that whatever faults the movie has, I just simply ignore it because Anne Hathaway just really broke my heart with her performance, her singing and acting. And here it's not necessarily something very similar to that, but it's definitely showing that she is trying her damnness to make this material as well known as possible, or as important as it can be. In here, Penelope is the wife of Odysseus and mother of Telemachus. She spent a lot of years waiting for her husband to come back to Ithaca in order to rule it again together and to be with their son Telemachus. Unfortunately, because of the years it took for him to come back, she has, in a matter of way, become very tired and desperate of holding on to a throne, and all the while we see this man trying to get her hand in matrimony, something that she doesn't want to do. Although she made the promise to Odysseus to marry someone else if he doesn't come back, she is still loyal to him even after so many years of absence. She becomes like the anchor of hope for Odysseus to come back home. In no matter way, everybody here does their own type of performance in their own different kind of ways. For Anne Hathaway, is making it more theatrical, more over the top, as she's trying to do something similar to what she did in Les Miserables. She's trying to be this vulnerable but yet a strong individual woman, trying her best to keep the men that trying to bestow her in matrimony at bay, because she doesn't want to do that. But at the same time, it is showing the loneliness, the desperation and anxiety that she feels because of Odysseus' absence, and that's something that is making her very, very exhausted. Her scenes with Tom Holland as Telemachus and with Matt Damon as Odysseus really show the type of woman that she is. A woman that is very strong, but she's getting really tired with all the passing of over the years. How she is so loyal to Odysseus, almost to a fault, in which is trying to rule Ithaca, but doesn't know how without Odysseus. And all the while, the city of Ithaca is getting more, is losing more authority, and is almost at the brink of chaos, which is something we don't necessarily see. But with the performance of Anne Hathaway, we can see the desperation that she starts to suffer. And I have to say, this is a great performance for her. Arguably one of her best as well. Now let's talk about the son of Odysseus and Penelope, Telemachus, played by Tom Holland. So Tom, right now, we all know him as a great actor, but more importantly, as the latest actor to don the suit of Spider-Man. In a week from now, I'm gonna talk about Brand New Day. But for now, let's focus on the performance that he does here, because this is not just an Odysseus story. In many ways, it's a Telemachus story, a coming of age for him, in which he's trying his best to understand his father's absence, but also trying to find a way to become king, to become stronger for the people of Ithaca. Because he started to realize the more time that passes, the more desperate the men are getting married to Penelope. Something that he doesn't want to happen, because he realizes that they are not suited for the throne. So he embarks in his own journey to not only learn about his father, but also learn about himself and trying to figure out his own strength. Well, he's also an anchor of hope for Odysseus to come back, because he hasn't seen him in many years. He's also having his own story of how he becomes strong, how he can be the king that the city of Ithaca needs in these turbulent times. So through all the characters he interacts, people that they knew about Odysseus, and through his own experiences, he started to become stronger and wiser, and realizing the sacrifices and compromising that he has to do whenever he becomes king. This is an important story for Telemachus to realize how important it is to become king of a throne from a country that is on the brink of collapsing. And that is something that it shows in Holland's performance. It's showing the inexperience of becoming a great leader, but it's also the journey of learning how to become a great leader, as well as learning so much about how his father was and how he can be somebody that his father could be proud of and become stronger as a result. So it really shows in this performance that he started to become a little bit more wiser and stronger with the passing of this movie. And now let's talk about the main character of this entire film, Odysseus, played by Matt Damon. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Matt Damon is one of my favorite actors of all time. I really enjoy him in all the movies that he has starred over the years. If you see him in any type of movie that he has been part of, you know that he really is one of those actors that you really feel that he's charming, yet at the same time feels like a real person that you can talk to. I see this guy play a lot of characters all over the years. His movies of Jason Bourne are some of my favorites of all time. The classics that he has done over the years throughout his young career, the type of humor that he can inject as well, but also the kind of drama that he could install in his performance. For example, the comedy, a movie that is a comedy for him that I really enjoy is The Martian. It's not intended to be a comedy as well, but he does bring such a charm and charisma to this character that you become fixated. And that is something that is shown through a lot of the performances he has done over the years. Here he plays the titular character of Odysseus, the man who is the king of Ithaca, who becomes one of the generals for Greece in order to invade Troy, and he creates the idea of invading Troy using the Trojan horse. This is his journey back home, how he has to go through some trial and tribulation in order to find his way back to Ithaca, learning and compromising some of the choices he has made, and be a little bit stubborn along the way because he realizes that the gods are probably going to put him to the test, and he doesn't want to lose any more men that he has lost in that war because he's suffering from some post-traumatic syndrome or some trauma from that war, from the War of Troy. In Matt Damon's performance, it really shows of a man who can be a hero, but at the same time of a blue-collar man who's trying to find his way home. He really does this approach of a silent or more analytical man, and tries to marry it with the original personification of what Odysseus was. Now, a lot of people have said that this is a different type of performance that we are used to, or this is a different interpretation of Odysseus that many people, that are historians in particular, are accustomed to. In fact, an interesting fact, a lot of the actors here in this movie have like American accents. It's almost bringing back a little bit to the original movies done in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s when the characters from different countries used their own voice. In this case, when America did movies like The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston and didn't do like, an accent for that era, but it's mostly that. Here is no exception, but it's still something that you can see in a theater, and you can see the performance and the pain through the actors. Here is no exception. Matt Damon plays Odysseus in a form of a man who has seen a lot, done a lot, in suffering from the choices he has made, but yet finding the best, smartest way to go back home and reclaim the throne of Ithaca. So definitely one of my favorite performances. He's a great leading man that helps us identify who he is and the choices he makes. And you sympathize with his journey, you sympathize with the trial and tribulation he has to go through in order to go back home, and you really appreciate the type of sacrifices that he has to make, even though he doesn't want to do those sacrifices, because he believes in life as well. And this becomes a great hero's journey back home. So definitely it's a great performance for Matt to do, and he definitely gives Odysseus the necessary dimensions and personality to make this character both sympathetic and heroic at the same time. Now, let's talk about the cinematography. Now, this is a subject that I know usually sometimes touch upon my reviews, but here it's important to mention because this is one of the key roles for Christopher Nolan to keep people in the movie theater. He likes to shoot movies with the IMAX projectors because he believes that he could get the best graphical images that he could get, like getting all the details through his movies. Whenever he has to shoot a scene about a place or a person, he has to shoot it in a way that feels almost like you can touch it, similar to 3D animation. But in this case, he wants to make it more detailed as possible. With the help of the cinematographer Hoyte van Hoyteman, who has also been the cinematographer for Oppenheimer, they both understand the impact that a movie can make with the necessary cinematography that you need to edit and to put into every movie. So in here is no exception. Hoyte van Hoyteman shoots a lot of the cinematography here whenever they have to shoot a city or a land or shooting it on water. A lot of people have mentioned that shooting with IMAX projectors can be a little bit hectic because of the noise it can produce. However, Christopher Nolan said that they found like a way of trying to silence that noise when they're shooting a scene in the sea or in a very small and silent place like in the forest. They're trying their best to shoot the best possible projections for the movie while also trying to not distract the actors as much as possible. Because a lot of actors have said that the IMAX projection can be a little bit very distracting with the noise that it can make. In fact, some of the scenes that you see, for example, like Telemachus talking to Menelaus, they're using mirrors in order to make the characters feel like they're in the same room at the same time, talking to each other. And all the while, they're trying to prevent the noise to getting out of the projector so it doesn't create a clunky experience whenever you're watching it and whenever you hear the characters talk. So it's important to mention that part right there was very important, but it definitely shows the type of detail and care that the cinematographers and Christopher Nolan are trying to give to each movie they are trying to shoot. Let's talk about one of the most key points that a lot of people pointed out in controversy, and that is the production design. A lot of historians have mentioned that the costumes and the replicas of some of the creatures look a little bit less like Greek mythology and more Viking-esque, particularly with the clothes, since a lot of people have mentioned that the clothes in ancient Greek are very different from the ones that we see in the movie. In fact, a lot of people have mentioned that these are the types of controversy because it doesn't feel historically accurate. However, I have to say, I like the production design that they have acquired in this movie. The design of the creatures like the Cyclops or the horse or even some of the creatures that they encounter along the way are actually pretty good, and I like the stylistic feel that it gives to each film, to each scene. So that part I don't have a problem. The boats that they use also had a more Viking-esque kind of feel, but I honestly feel like it was almost deliberate since they wanted to shoot it in a much better boat because they didn't have something resembling to a Greek boat in order to shoot it in the IMAX projector. Yet it's something that it doesn't bother me the least because I honestly think that the production design that they have used for this movie really feels palpable. The scenes in which they use real places in Morocco, Italy, and some of the other European places really feel genuine and real. You feel like you actually are in those places with those characters. So on that part, I really enjoy. I also like to say that I enjoy the costume designs for a lot of the characters. This was the point of controversy for a lot of people, but I don't find it as problematic as any other. Honestly, it's just an interpretation. I mean, Christopher Nolan is not trying to be almost 100% story accurate. It's just trying to give his own interpretations. He doesn't use CGI in this film, which is very refreshing because we live in a day and age in which everything is computer generated. Here, Nolan wants to do this movie as real as possible, wants to make it to feel real. So I definitely say that he's succeeded in those with the production and the effects. And it definitely succeeded in those. My favorite one is the Cyclops. He mentioned that he got inspired by some of the designs that Guillermo del Toro does for his movies. So he designed kind of Guillermo del Toro like a Cyclops for the scene in which the Greeks are trying to go into this cave and they encounter the Cyclops. And that is something that I really found admirable for Nolan to do and to pull off. Now let's talk about action sequences. A lot of the action almost takes place on sea, which is some of the key points for this movie. But most of the time, whenever they're shooting location, it's really genuine and it feels real. Some of the scenes that we see in this film are some of the best and one of my favorites among all the others. Like the escape from the Cyclops, running away from the giant armored man, the invasion of Troy with the design of the horse, the encounter with the witch, in which they curse Odysseus' men and turn it into animals. The scenes on the sea are some of the most claustrophobic and most intense scenes that I've seen in a while. The action sequences, whenever they have to shoot a fight between a lot of characters, it really feels real. The last act of this film alone is one of my favorite scenes of this film because it feels very cathartic and very real to see Odysseus embarking into this fight to the death battle in which he has to do in order to reach home. So definitely one of my favorite aspects. Now let's talk about an important aspect of this film, the music, in this case the soundtrack. So once again, back for Christopher Nolan, we get composer Ludwig Göransson, in which he has done music in the past before. You probably heard his music through The Mandalorian and through Oppenheimer most recently. He really is the kind of man who tries to give a mood and an atmosphere to the music that he does. In here, we see that his process of making music, similar to the day and age of the Greeks, is to recreate some of the musical instruments of that era. So he went out of his way to learn and to choreograph some of the instruments that they have used during that time. And I have to say, he really succeeds so, and he creates a palpable image of hope and desperation, anxiety, and adventure in a matter of speaking. It also gives the dramatic scenes a heavy weight of importance. Whenever they shoot a scene that could be a form of foreshadowing or to be a callback, he really does a great job into making it feel special. And that is the most important part whenever you're making a movie, to make the soundtrack to make it blend in as much as possible. And in my opinion, he succeeded. Now, let's go to my final part. And this is the part that we need to ask. Out of all the movies that I've seen from Christopher Nolan, which one is my favorite? It has to be this one. And the reason why is because as much as I love Inception or The Dark Knight or even Interstellar or some of the movies that he has done over the years, I have to say, this one is my favorite for a simple reason. It feels simple but identifiable. Most of the movies that I've seen from Christopher Nolan tend to overcomplicate things, are not exactly bad, but to a matter of speaking, they can be a little bit difficult to follow sometimes. And it's important to mention that, yes, he likes to be this type of director who likes to shoot it in a certain type of way, and he likes to involve this certain type of characters and stories. But I have to say this one is my favorite because of the simple fact that he told this story in a more fantastical way. Most people say that he's still trying to make it as realistic as possible, which is true, but it still feels more fantastical. You can say, oh, okay, I could see that happen in real life, but I can see something that I cannot explain happen to me. And he still marries the concept of Greek gods and mythology very well into this film. I mean, some of the arguments that people said is that it doesn't have Greek gods, but I like the fact that he doesn't shoot this movie trying to make the gods appear into people. Like, we can understand. Sometimes they are forces beyond our rightful eye. We don't always have to see it, but we feel it, and we can see the presence. We can feel the presence whenever we see a scene with one of the characters. Here, I really feel that way, and it didn't bother me in the slightest. In my opinion, this is a journey, this is a movie that I would like to watch almost every single time for the simple fact that it really brings a lot of emotion, simplicity, yet adventure to a character that has been told for many different forms for a lot of different people throughout many years. So here is no exception, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to watch it once again so I can see more, I can feel more of this feeling of watching the Odyssey, because it really feels like a journey back home. And in many ways it is for Christopher Nolan. You can make the argument that the movies that he has directed, some of them have men in a journey back home. You can say that this is the one that he has waited for the most to direct and to create in his own image. And in my opinion, he succeeded. So, what does that leave us? What is the Odyssey for me? Is it just a journey back home story? Yes, but it's more than that. It's a journey back home story, a road trip story, a fantastical story, a love story, a coming of age story, a dark story. And in many ways, they're all into one. In many ways, Odyssey's story has inspired a lot of the stories that we are heard today, from comic books to sci-fi to dark horror stories. I can tell you, this definitely was the template of that, and I can see why Christopher Nolan felt appealed to direct something like this, because he really is like a journey that we all embark on. I like my movies and my life to be something of a journey, that you discover something, or you rediscover something that you didn't know before, but you do now. And in my opinion, this is his best movie thus far. Would be one of the best? Arguably, probably not. Maybe Inception, Memento, and Oppenheimer could be contenders for that. But in my opinion, this will always be the one that I will rewatch the most. I can tell you, I can definitely go back and watch it again just to feel that way once again. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think about the Odyssey? Did you love it? Do you hate it? Do you find it problematic? Do you find it enjoyable enough? Let me know in the comment section below. Next week, like I said, we continue with a look to Tom Holland's movies, and the one that I'm reviewing, this is what I've been waiting to talk about for a long time. But until then, I'm Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Peace.